today I wanted to talk about regression, the title, and how it relates to my main coping mechanism, I would say, which is escapism. And first of all, I want to get it out of the way just because my brain needs to get it out of the way so I won't fixate on it. That I feel like whenever I talk about things on YouTube, that I have to come up with a purpose or a reason to why I'm doing it. Like, hey, today I'm making a YouTube video and it's because blah 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 blah, and that's the purpose. Blah 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 blah. But I'm trying to nail in my head that I am allowed to talk about things just because I want to talk about things, and there doesn't have to be some grandiose purpose. And it can simply be because I like to talk about myself. Talking about myself makes me feel good. Okay. So, I wanted to, and I could psychoanalyze that. I could be like, this is why talking about myself to no one, to a camera, makes me feel so good. It relates back to this exact moment on March the 23rd, 2009, when this thing happened to me, and now it made my brain wired to like to talk about myself. No, like I could do that, and my brain wants to do that, but it's not going to, because we're talking about enough psychology. So, regression. Getting into it, yeah? So, a therapist a while back talked to me about regression. One of the, I'm gonna sound so like, one of the only things I learned in therapy, but no, therapy was not fun for me. And I'm not even just trying to sound like a know-it-all, like I'm better than the therapist, because I'm very much not. And I like learning from people, I like learning from articles, I like learning, period. I don't think I'm better than these people. They have a degree, and that's what it sounds like when I say these things. But no, therapy was not fun for me at all. And I will make a separate YouTube video on that, because therapy was not fun for me at all. And you know what, hold me to it. I will make a separate YouTube video on that, because therapy was not fun for me at all. But anyways, one of the good things I did learn from a therapist was that made a lot of sense to me. I ramble so much. That made a lot of sense to me was she mentioned that I probably do use regression as a form of coping, which I never thought about before. And she said, yeah, this is how I think you do it. She said, because, it's going to sound so emo, but it made a lot of sense. Because you can't think back to a time in your life where everything was peachy and green, and you felt completely good about everything, completely safe and completely secure, that you can't regress back to any time that you felt that way. How most kids will like suck on their thumb again to go back into when they were 2, I don't know, or some kids will wet the bed like they did as a kid when regressing back to a time, blah blah. Okay, that example, I saw it on articles before, but now that I'm thinking about it, it doesn't completely make sense. I'm gonna have to ponder that over, because if you're regressing back to a time that feels safe, why would you regress back to when you wet the bed as a kid? When I assume a lot of kids would have wet the bed because they were having a stressful time, and that's how it manifested in their body. So why would you regress back to that? I am going to have to look that up, but off topic. So most people regress back into a time when they were younger, as a kid, when they felt safer, before they had the problems that they do now, is the point I am trying to get across. But my therapist said, because I didn't have those experiences, childhood wasn't la-di-da for me, even though I would say I was a happy kid, like, sure, bad things happen, but I still think I was a happy kid, but I'll explain that. But because I didn't have those safe feelings growing up, I couldn't regress back into a time growing up when I felt safe, and I couldn't regress to that. So she explained to me how I regressed to a time period that I wasn't alive to feel safe. And you can't tell now, because I'm actually wearing my Brooklyn Park should I say the school I went to? Oh well, I'm wearing my Brooklyn Park Elementary School shirt that I made in 5th grade in NASA's Best Club. Yeah, I don't have a, I don't, yeah, yeah, so maybe I'm wearing this shirt because I'm regressing back. Huh, I don't make sense when I speak. Anyways, so I'm basically, long story short, I tend to regress back to the 60s and 70s, which you can't tell because I'm not in my 60s or 70s fit right now because it's nighttime. It's like 12 a.m., so why would I be dressed in a nice little hippie fit? But basically, I regress back to a time period I wasn't even alive because it makes me, that time period just feels safe to me, and I don't know. It's just it's a time period that for some reason or another I really like and really I just really like. I don't know why in particular it's that time period that I chose to regress back to. But it is the 60s and the 70s, you know? Like I just imagine like 1969 at the Woodstock Festival. Like I don't like ooh, when I tell you I watched that whole Woodstock documentary in and out sometimes just to feel like I'm physically there in that time period because it makes me feel so good. And even continuing on that movie thing, sometimes, like what back when I went to school, I physically could not make myself go to school for many reasons, mental reasons, but unless I one specific example is like watching the movie Fast Times at Ridgemount High, which is a bunch of teenagers teenaging around in the 80s in high school, outside of high school, going to their part-time job after high school, this and that, just teenagers teenaging around. And when I would watch that movie, based in the 80s, of course, because, you know, that's 60s, 70s, even early 80s, I tend to regress back to unless I was able to get my mindset into a form of regression by watching that movie, particularly about kids going to school, I could not make myself go to school because then I wouldn't have that coping mechanism doing something to make myself go to school because I couldn't carry that coping mechanism to school unless I could make myself go to that place as much as possible. Does that make sense? I feel like I don't make sense at all. Oh well. So, yeah, I tend to regress back in to a earlier time period before I was born a lot because there's no time period from when I was born to regress back to, or so I thought. So, as I'm finding out lately that maybe there is, like I said earlier, I was a happy child, like even though things happened, I was still happy, you know? The mental illness didn't develop until when I was 11. So like I was a happy child. And one way I'm finding this out is that lately, since like March of this year, I have been watching so, so many Cimarelli videos. Do y'all remember Cimarelli? Like, you know what? I even, I even, I even I knew I was going to mention Cimarelli. I thought about what I was going to mention, and I have a Cimarelli video pulled up on this laptop here. I'm a laptop girl. I don't really use phones to relax. Laptops just do it for me. Like, I don't want to watch YouTube on a phone. I want to watch YouTube on a laptop. It just feels better maneuvering a laptop. Am I the only one like that? But that's besides the point. I even went to the part I want to show you, the video I want to show you, because my Cimarelli hyperfixation is coming back in full swing for some reason. For some reason. As if I'm not explaining the reason here, but y'all, look at them. This is their perfect video by Pink. Here we go. My favorite girl was her, Lauren, her, Danny, and her, Lisa. But now I only really like Danny. But Lauren really killed it in this video. Like, this video is so good. Like, do y'all remember them? Like, listen. Wait, is it turned up? Oh. Listen. Like you're nothing. she switched from rapping into singing and hit them notes perfectly. Ooh, ooh. But yeah, so I used to watch Cimarelli a lot in when I was 11, before the mental illness hit, you know, in the beginning stages of being 11, being in 6th grade. I just remember watching copious amounts of Cimarelli. They were like the second YouTubers I ever watched, right after Cute Girls Hairstyles. Maybe they're next on my regression list. But so I started watching a lot of Cimarelli videos, and it just makes me feel safe for some reason, and good and relaxed. It's like, nostalgia is a cruel, cruel mistress, because on one hand, it's like, I miss these days, you know? And it's just like a certain type of pain that goes along with nostalgia. But at the same time, it's just so sweet. It's just so sweet. And before Cimarelli, I was listening to, I found myself listening to just a lot of pop music, the hits of the 2000s and 2010s that I grew up with. And I'm not even a pop girly, like, I'm a classic rock, disco girly, 60s and 70s R&B and soul girly, like, through and through, you know? Like, because I regress back to the 60s and 70s. Of course, the soundtrack to my regression has to be the music of the 60s and 70s, you know? But for some reason lately, I have just been going ham with the pop of the, you know, the pop of my days. You know, like the Lady Gaga, the Born This Way by Lady Gaga. Ooh, rah, rah, ah, ah, rama, rama, ma, gaga, ooh, la, la. That's Bad Romance, but I'm just saying, like, ooh, Lady Gaga was the girl. Katy Perry, oh my gosh, no. I have a special bond with Katy Perry, because me acting like Katy Perry is my bestie. Like, no, what I mean by that is, oh, back in the day, when I was a kid, it was so fun being a kid, because I remember hanging around with my childhood best friend, and she had these little mini cars. Like, do y'all remember them the mini cars? All the girls in the neighborhood would have the mini cars, or the little kid motorcycles, them purple motorcycles, motorbikes, whatever. But she had the car, and it had a radio on it, I believe. And I just remember singing a lot of Katy Perry, because Katy Perry was the girl back then. Teenage Dream and Firework, like, oh my gosh, Katy Perry was the soundtrack to my childhood. And we always used to say when we were kids, we always used to imagine just being 16, because 16 was the golden age. I'm sure you all knew it. 16 in our heads was the golden age, and we would just be like, when I'm 16, I'm going to have my own car. I'm imagining driving on the highway at night, maybe going to a party, going back from a party, and just blasting and singing along with all my besties to Katy Perry's Firework. And that's what we imagined. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen, because life doesn't always go your way. But now it's like I'm regressing to what I wanted to do when I was 16 that I imagined I'd do when I was 9, which is listening to a lot of Katy Perry. Unfortunately, I still don't drive. Never been behind the wheel of a car, and I'm 20. But yeah, I'm just listening to a lot of that. And let me tell y'all my favorite 2000 song. Do y'all care? No. Am I even talking to anybody? No. My first favorite song. I always ask people this. What was your first favorite song? If anybody is listening to this, I want to know, what is the first ever favorite song you imagine having? You remember having the first favorite song you ever had? Because mine, I specifically remember being Hey Soul Sister by Train. And that song still hits so hard. Drops of Jupiter is also good, very good. But Hey Soul Sister hit for me. It used to come on Nickelodeon all the time, during commercials. Well, only sometimes, actually. And I used to imagine how, man, if I wasn't such a goody-goody, which I hated being called a goody-goody back then, but I kind of was, in school at least. But I would be like, man, if I wasn't such a goody-goody, I would pretend to be sick and stay home from school just because I wanted to stay home all day watching Nickelodeon, having laser focus on the commercials until Train by Soul Sister, until Hey Soul Sister by Train came on. Cause, you know, back in the day, I didn't have like a computer to look it up with. You know, this was like 2009. I didn't have like a computer to look it up with. My family wasn't gonna buy me like a CD only to listen to 1 or 2 songs from a Train album. You know, like, oh, it was Nickelodeon that I heard that song. Hey, soul sister, ain't that Mr. on the radio? Stereo, the way you move ain't there, you know. Hey, soul sister, I don't wanna miss a single thing you do. Tonight, the way you do. I don't know how to play guitar. And it's broken. Which I literally don't know how, because I just left it sitting somewhere and the strings broke off when I wasn't even touching it. But okay. And yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of pop and a lot of Cimarelli that I listened to when I was 11, which is, the time period is important, which I also want to talk about, because I listened specifically to Cimarelli right after I got a computer, of course, and it was right before I became depressed, like directly right before, like, so for some reason I'm regressing back to the time right before I became depressed, like, I mean right before. Like, I remember there was a time when I was 11 I wasn't depressed, and then there was also a time when I was 11 when I started becoming depressed, and then it just snowballed from there, like, absolutely took a nosedive from there, like, so, yeah, just right before. And now I'm listening to a lot of Cimarelli, like, every single video they have, I'm listening to Cimarelli, like, it's cover songs. How interesting can they be? Cover songs of songs I don't even normally listen to. That's not my taste in music. Maybe as a kid, but not even anymore. Like, how interesting can they be? But yet, they really hit the nail on, they kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because not only is it the pop music I used to listen to in the early 2010s and late 2000s, but it's also the girl group I used to listen to back in the day, so, like, it really hits the nail on 2 heads, kills 2 birds with 1 stone, and, yeah, so, I don't know, my, form of escaping back into the 60s and 70s as a form of regression is kind of taking a back seat to my 2000s pop fantasies, huh? From back when I was a kid. So maybe my old therapist wasn't completely right, because now who knew what the future held back then, because now I am developing regression back into some memories from childhood. Does that make sense? Yeah, and also another thing I want to talk about before this video gets too long, which we all know I'm self-conscious about, is that, talking about self-conscious, whoever the little girlie was on the last video I talked about when I was talking about suicide and my depression and all that, the little girlie who decided to comment on that video, with the utmost peace and love, you would look so pretty if you lost some weight. Unhinged! That is so uncalled for. So uncalled for. I speechless, absolutely speechless, like, oh my gosh, if it wasn't so funny and meme-worthy to me, the absolute self-consciousness I do actually have revolving my weight would probably feed through, but it's so funny to me, like, okay. Anyways, yeah, that was a little uncalled for, and if you're watching this with the utmost peace and love, shut the up. No. Because, no, let me lecture. If you are watching this, I'm gonna lecture you real quick. that you can you can be and feel pretty even if you aren't at a healthy weight. And I wanted to comment so bad on your little comment, reply on your comment. Yes, I am fat, but I also feel pretty, but I don't feel pretty, so I can't lie. But maybe that's not because I'm fat, you know? Like, you know, if I think you can be pretty and fat at the same time. I don't think those things are particularly go hand in hand, you know? Do I advocate health? Yes. Do I think there's I'm not I'm not a nutritionist. Is there ways to be healthy while being overweight? Probably, yeah. Like, ugh, it's just, ugh. I wanted to explain that more, but I lost my train of thought to it. But, yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, I also wanted to talk about how it's such a fine line to dangle. Escapism, teetering on the brink of dissociation. I will make a separate video about dissociation because that hand in hand with escapism, and they do go hand in hand, are my two biggest forms of coping mechanisms, even if I don't want to dissociate, and I really don't. And for the record, when I say dissociate, I mean derealizate, because I don't really deal with dissociation, you know? I never feel disconnected from my body. I have the complete opposite of that. I feel absolutely trapped in my body, like trapped in my head, like absolutely trapped in my head. Like I cannot get out of this body. I cannot get out of this head. That's how I feel. And so I don't feel real. Like I don't feel connected to anything around me at all, ever, but that's a whole other topic for another day. But it's so hard to balance escapism and derealization, because I feel like if I go too hard with escapism, escaping into all these different time periods that came before me, it's very easy to get lost in disillusion and disreality. It's very, very easy to feel like the reality you're looking at right now, this wall, this girl, this chair, this phone, the surroundings, it's very hard, very easy to feel like you're not actually in it, and it's not actually real and tangible, which I feel like a lot, like 9.99 times out of 10. It's like I just don't feel like I'm actually in my surroundings. Like it just feels like a dream. And I feel like one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons it may happen is because maybe I do go too hard in escapism and regressing back to whatever time period, whether in my life or outside of my life, that I'm regressing back to, because if I spend most of my mental time in a period that I'm not actually tangibly and physically in, it must be very easy to get lost in that, you know? Does that make sense? Like, how can I feel like I'm in the here and now when it's very easy to, when I spend most of my time, mental time, in a period that's not the here and now, you know? Yeah, I don't know, maybe I just need to up my meditation some more. I kind of fallen off the wagon, unfortunately, with meditation when I used to go very hard on it, and unfortunately I can't remember if it helped or not with dissociation. I really can't remember, but I should test that out again, because the thing about depression is that you don't have the motivation to do anything. It's very hard to do anything. You just can't find the will or the care or the motivation to do anything, so I can't even, like, hype myself up to do something that will make me feel better, which is meditation. Like, I don't know. I think I need to meditate more, and maybe that'll help me. But sometimes I feel like I fall too much in love with my own pain and victimization, to where it's like I made myself a home in this mental illness and pain. So it's like it's very hard to dig myself out of it and drag myself out of it, because it's so hard to dig myself out of this comfy little spot of mental illness that I'm so accustomed and used to now, into this whole new territory of, lightness and happiness and meditation and things that'll make me feel better, because it's just I'm so used to being in this little home of mental illness. So I need to really get down on it. I need to get down on it and get down into actually doing things that'll make me feel better, like meditation. So that's my little spew. I feel like I give off ADHD vibes, but I never felt like I had ADHD, and nobody has ever said I had ADHD, and I don't feel like I have ADHD, but I feel like the way I talk and my thought processes give off big ADHD vibes, but like, I don't know. I really don't think I have ADHD. I'll have to see what the psychologist says about that one, but yeah. Regression, Succession, no, I don't even watch that show. Regression, escapism, derealization. And that's all. One more thing. Has anybody else just not felt real? I said that wrong. Has anybody else just felt off? Very off these past few days. Maybe it's the copious amounts of traumatic and hard and bad things going on in my life that's making me feel this way, when that's probably what it is, when of course my brain is like, what retrograde is going on right now to make me feel this way? No, girl, it's probably not no retrograde. It's probably just your tangible reality. So stop trying to regress into retrogrades. You know, I don't know. But the world has just had an off vibe. It just feels off. Something feels off. I spotted like 50 vultures today over the highway. I think they were vultures, some kind of giant black bird sitting on the highway signs for like, there was a highway sign, blackbirds, highway sign, blackbirds, highway sign, blackbirds, highway sign to the left, highway sign to the right, highway sign up there, highway sign back there, all blackbird, giant blackbirds on them in the pouring rain. And I was like, okay, that seems a little off. Like, maybe it's not just me feeling off. Like, maybe something's a little off, but sometimes, when I think these things, I start going into absolutely unreality. Like, to the point where I don't know what's real and what's not, and I feel like I'm, like, making up bad omens in my head. That's, like, I don't know how to explain it. I get lost in unreality sometimes, and that's all there is to it. Is that due to regression? Is that due to escapism? Is that due to derealization? Am I just SHIT insane? I don't know. Okay. Bye, y'all. Thank you for listening to my rants and things I want to talk about, because I like talking about myself and I want attention. Bye.